there was a lot of volatility. Everybody was screaming at each other on the job site. It was just screaming. It was toxic. What they do is they kind of dangle that carrot. They give you a little bit of money just to keep you in the game, and you end up getting deeper. When I found myself in the middle of that, instead of throwing my hands up, I figured the only way to protect myself, my company, my employees was to finish the job. Just see it through and hope that whatever happened, the little guy completing the job gets paid. Here's the thing, moving forward, if I'm in a contract and no one's answering my emails, my phone calls, or giving me answers to what I need to know, then right there, I'm going to tell you, I'm probably going to remove myself from that job site until everybody comes to the table and talks. If one single job can cripple your company, then you're biting off more than you can chew. So in my case, that wasn't the case, and especially having you on my side. But boy, at first it felt like they were trying to.
Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of the Construction MF'ers podcast. My name is 𝗦𝗽liche𝗁𝗏. I'm the CEO and founder of Mobilization Funding. And today we have an awesome guest with us. I'm excited to have him share his stories. We're going to learn about some problems on the job, what you can learn from those problems, more importantly, what lessons are there and how you implement them for change. He's on the other side of those, and he's going to share them all with you. 20 plus years in the business. He is the president and founder, Rick McGill, Rick's Electrical.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited, man, to talk to you. I've been waiting for this.
Me too. I have a lot I like to share.
All right, let's get right into it. Well, for folks not listening, obviously electrical company, but tell them a little bit about your story. Give a little overview, where your company, is founded, what positions in the market you're in, and that way everyone can kind of get a little framework for what you're doing.
Sure. So I began working at 18 in electrical, and I worked for a company that promised me that they would sign so that I could eventually have my own business, and they did. I followed through. I stuck with them for the 6 years, and sure enough, they did sign, and I became an electrical contractor at the age of 24. Fast forward, I started out obviously with smaller jobs by myself in a pickup truck, and eventually graduated to the first year to a couple of helpers. Today, it's going to be 24 years now. Today, we're a little over 20 people strong, and like every other construction company, depending on what's going on that particular time, it can go up to over 30 employees and down to 15 employees. But in a snapshot, I started from scratch by myself, and has slowly developed from residential to commercial to industrial to pretty much all aspects of electrical at this point.
I love it. I love it. I bet you've seen a lot in the last 23 years, the ups, the downs, great projects that are just bread and butter, consistent, and probably some that just didn't go the way you like, huh?
Exactly. So for the most part, yes, I love this business. It's been fruitful, but it's had its challenges as well. One recently that you guys helped me out tremendously with was a project for a multifamily. It was a mixed-use building, and there was problems with the general contractor and the actual developer not getting along and making too many changes, and we all kind of got wrapped up into it. In my case, nobody was getting paid. After 6 months, it started to, as you know, really take a toll on all of us that were on that job site. So the only way to defend myself against a giant, because it was a hedge fund, the developer, and the GC was kind of not able to do much, really. When you go up against someone that sizes, when I found myself in the middle of that, instead of throwing my hands up, I figured the only way to protect myself, my company, my employees was to finish the job. Just see it through and hope that whatever happened, the little guy completing the job gets paid. So that's in a snapshot what happened, but there was a lot more to it. It came down to everybody was just pointing fingers. People were quitting, walking off the job site. And I found myself so deep into debt because of them, the amount of money that they owed me. All my cash flow had gone into it. that I pretty much sat down. I spoke to my attorney, and the way I was looking at it is if this ended up in court, the only people that are going to make money are the lawyers. I was going to continue losing money. So we were far enough along where I analyzed it from every angle and decided, you know what, we're so close to the end. They owe me so much money. We're so close to the end. It was worth it to me to finish the job, see it through, and then make my plea. Eventually, I got paid. I was able to get, with your help, tremendous help, I was able to get to the other side of it. Not everybody was as fortunate, but that was one of the tough parts of my career. One of the toughest parts of my career.
So I love that you're going to talk about this. Let me ask you, for the folks listening now, what are the lessons you learned from this? And then let's go back and maybe talk about how it unfolded and what happened. But I want everyone to hear, like, through this experience, which was tough, and this lasted for you, more than 6 months and a lot of different stress points. But what lessons did you learn from this process that you would want people to know about now?
Protecting yourself in your contract. I tried to reach out to everyone and speak to people, and when things are bad, people tend to avoid each other. So I'm very big on communication. So I tried to make my case with the GC. I got nowhere with them at all. I didn't even get responses from them. We reached out, obviously through my lawyer. We reached out to the developer. They were understanding, but again, their thing is your contract's not with us. So, but I was able to entice them to help me, the developer themselves, because the fact that I told them, look, I have the material to see the job through and get power to that building. No matter what happens, you have to get power to that building. And so I guess it piqued their interest, and they agreed. So that's how I kind of maneuvered, and I had to tread lightly because I had to be careful I didn't step on anyone's toes. But I didn't see this job going anywhere positive. I saw this is going to be lawsuit after lawsuit. People are going to take tremendous losses if they can survive it. And so that's how I came up with the conclusion that if I do the right thing, if I just keep moving, with your help, obviously I was able to, it was tough, but I was able to see it through and do right by my side. Now, did I take a loss on that job? Yeah, I did take a pretty decent loss, but I did recover most of my cash flow back and was able to continue doing business.
And you kept it from being catastrophic loss. Losses happen all the time that you can pick up and move on from, but a catastrophic loss is a whole different ballgame.
Correct. And I'm not saying that I would recommend that everybody just finish doing the job and then pray to get paid. It was a risky move on my part, but I didn't see any other option. And so I figured that if the business is going to suffer a catastrophic loss, let me at least go for broke. Let me try. And it worked out.
Well, though, I give you a lot of credit. I don't know if you realize, but when you told the story just now, you didn't just make a willy-nilly decision to just move forward and finish. You said you spoke to your lawyers, you analyzed your cash flow, you saw where you were, how far along you were, how much you were owed. You did an analysis on what it would like to go to bankruptcy. You did an analysis on what it would like to walk off the job. And then you made a decision. That's a lot different than just, deciding to finish. That's a good, solid business decision that's made based on the amount of facts and the amount of data that you could pull from. And it sounds like you gathered information from the right people too, including your legal, including your accounting, including your lenders, including yourself. And then you made a decision. And that's what you have to do in business. You have to gather facts and make decisions. So you should be really proud of just the process you took. Now, it worked out, and it doesn't mean that it was guaranteed to, but it's still the best decision with what you had at the time.
Correct. And my mindset, to put it in layman's terms, is if this ends up in court, more likely it will, is how am I going to look in court? I wanted to be the one contractor that said, you know what, I believe in this project. I want to see it through. I've already gone this far. If they hadn't paid me, I mean, I was looking at the optics. At the same time, the future of my family, my employees, which are my family as well. So I think I made the right decision on that particular project.
I agree. So let's dissect it a minute. Looking back and having the ability to look at it in hindsight now. Were there any signs up front that you wish you paid attention to or that you didn't see or you saw? And would you have done something differently? Again, like let's think if this is a building moment and you have someone listening to this, whether they're an electrician, a plumber, or any other specialty trade, if they could learn something from this, what do you wish or what do you hope that they could hear from you or see to where they could act quicker or sooner?
The first thing I did notice at the very beginning, before we even began working, there was a change of superintendents and project managers. That kind of drew some red flags, but I was already under contract. And forgive me, we did do a power pole for their construction trailer and some other minor stuff. But when I saw people walking before the job even started, I knew that there was possibly a toxic environment. But when I tried to remove myself from the project, they convinced me that everything was fine. Moving forward, we went ahead and started, and then I noticed that the first paycheck I had to really hound them. That's typically when someone needs to really reevaluate, do I want to continue down this rabbit hole? In my case, they were very convincing. So I continued. Then after that, I didn't start to see payments for a long time.
Is this the GC or the developer at this point?
The general contractor.
Okay.
So I didn't see payments for a long period of time. 1 month went by, fine. 2 months, I started to get a little concerned. When I went past 90 days, I knew there was a problem. Then what they do is they kind of dangle that carrot. They give you a little bit of money just to keep you in the game, and you end up getting deeper and deeper into it. And so what happened was, for example, the only way I could see that anyone can really protect themselves is, number one, realize what's going on. Is there anything shifty about the job? If you see people quitting with the general contractor you're working with, there might be a problem internally. Number two, there was a lot of volatility. Everybody was screaming at each other on the job site. It was just screaming. It was toxic. And at that point, I was so deep into it. I was owed so much money that now you're kind of on the fence. Do I stay? Do I go? And when you're owed that amount of money of your own cash flow, it tends to keep you there. By the time we hit 5 months and then 6 months, we were already, like I was saying, so close to seeing the finish line. And I've already gone through so much. And with your help, I was able to complete it. Like I said, that was my only option that I saw. But what I did do, hindsight is 2020, obviously. So what I did do is I replaced some language, or added some language in my contract. And what I put in there was, and every GC has to accept this, or I won't do the contract. Is I put in there that if after I create a pay app, if within 45 days of that approved pay app I am not paid, then I reserve the right to remove myself from that contract until they catch up with all the monies due. And that time that I lost from having to remove myself from the job site, not the contract, excuse me, from the job site, that time would have to be tacked onto the back end of the project. In other words, I'm not going to lose the amount of time because you didn't pay me and I had to leave.
I mean, you're going to snuff out a lot with that language in a contract up front. I mean, how someone reacts to that, it's going to be pretty telling.
So far, I have not had any issues. And for the most part, I mean, 9 out of 10 contractors pay you on time, or at least in a fair amount of time, even if it's a little. But what these people were doing when they weren't answering me, here's the thing. Moving forward, if I'm in a contract and no one's answering my emails, my phone calls, or giving me answers to what I need to know, then right there, I'm going to tell you, I'm probably going to remove myself from that job site until everybody comes to the table and talks.
Giving yourself that kind of ability in your contract language, and also having the fortitude and the discipline and the confidence to actually step into that with the general contractor up front and negotiating that language, that comes from a real place of strength, because I think it's too often you feel like you have to sign the contract or you can't negotiate, whatever other stuff we all tell each other, tell ourselves before to make something more comfortable that we don't want to be uncomfortable, right? But that uncomfortable little conversation up front can save you from a catastrophe now, but it also gives you the gift to figure out how this person's going to be without having to be in a bad situation.
Agreed. So if they have a problem with it, I don't want the contract. I mean, I survived 2008. That was tough. That one was, on me. I was doing what everybody else was doing. We were making so much money that it just seemed like it was never going to end. But I survived it. And then the pandemic happened. That was tough enough. And then during the pandemic, this contract happened. I felt like everything was stacked against me. There was a high level of anxiety. But at the end of the day, I just looked at it as, what else am I going to do? I confront it. So obviously, if they hadn't paid me, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But they did. They did, and it was an experience. I think that the reason I also continued is that the developer stayed in communication with us. If they hadn't, then I probably would have walked away. But there were so many variables, and it was a fairly large job for us. It was a 7-figure job. So you can imagine 6 months out of a 1-year contract, how much money they were holding, which pretty much started to cripple me.
Yeah, and how much you spent though too.
What I spent in not only in interest, legal fees, lost time, it was astronomical.
And just the materials and labor too. The materials and labor alone are enough.
Correct. They made us spin our wheels out there. Way too many business or billable hours, and it added up. When I started looking at analyzing the job after a year's time, I couldn't believe the amount of money we took a hit on. But it could have been a lot worse if it hadn't been for you guys.
Well, the contract language is one change you've made now. What are some other changes you've made in the business that you've learned from this project that you've implemented?
Communication with my key guys. When I say key guys, I mean the guys that manage the field for me. So they have to report back and let me know, hey, if you sent an email out and you didn't get a response within 24 hours, it needs to be brought to my attention. If they're not doing their weekly meetings on a job site or whatever the GC puts forth at the beginning of the contract, if you see that they fail to continue, then why? What's the problem? Why are we not having in-progress meetings? So these are the kind of things that, because they're my eyes and ears out in the field, and they went through this with me, and these guys were almost flipping coins to figure out who was going to go out there and take charge. So it was fun to watch them become businessmen instead of just electricians or superintendents. These guys now, wherever they're at, if they see a problem, they're reported back to me. We have a meeting about it, and we send emails. And that's something that I'm really big on, is communication, emails, and documentation. The way I always explain it to my guys is, if you have an issue and you didn't put it in an email, it was never said. It doesn't exist.
True. You've made a couple great points. The communication between the field and in-house decision makers, whether it's directly to you, the owner, or other leadership internally, is so critical. The communication between the field and even the accounting team, when you're ordering things, what money's getting spent, where are you in progress to the budget, to the work schedule, those are so key. What other things have you implemented now that you've seen such a benefit from? Already the contract language, obviously the communication. Is there any other lessons learned that you would want folks to be implementing now? Maybe they could learn from you without having to go through that?
What helped me a lot to get through a lot of this, the bad times, was I went through my accounting forensically. I mean, I tore it down to the penny, and knowing exactly where every penny was at all times helped me make decisions moving forward, because I knew if I was going to be able to survive it, pay for it, or not. So definitely know your numbers, know your finances, so that you know, okay, I'm going to take a risk. Is it really worth it? Is it worth the risk? Because there were some situations where I had to have conversations with people on their side and say, look, I can't do it, because I can't expect to send people out there and not pay them. So they still didn't do anything about it, but the developer was like, look, send them out there. We'll take care of it. And that was all done through my legal team. So I did feel comfortable going out and doing the work. Now, they never put it in writing, but they did speak to an officer of the court, which is my lawyer, and they did agree to pay me. So that was my incentive to continue.
How did you go about doing the analysis on the accounting and budget and the forensics in your case? Let's say, was that something you were always keen to do or is within your skill set? And if it's not, how did you go about figuring that out? Because I think a lot of folks sometimes that's one of the pieces that might be missing, they're not comfortable with. They're a great tradesperson and they got the business aspects and management figured out, but the cash and finances is not a strong suit. What would you suggest they do?
Definitely take a real hard look at your overhead was my blind spot. So everybody knows what materials cost, what your labor is going to cost, and your hard, what I would call your hard costs, like your trucks, insurance, stuff like that. But your hidden cost, what caused me to do is I would see money come and go, and I didn't have a profound understanding of where exactly was all this money going. So once I knew what all my hard costs were and I separated that out, I started looking at the hidden cost. And the hidden cost comes down to pretty much, what are you spending on lunch? I mean, do that math. That's an eye opener. What do you spend on lunch a year? Little things like that. And when I started adding everything up, I saw that there was more fat than there was anything else. So I like to, especially being in that position, that situation, it's time to get rid of the fat. So I cut out all the unnecessary expenditure. But basically what I had to do is take the hard costs, and anything that was left over was what I needed to decipher. What is it? Where is it going? Is it a necessary cost? And then once I figured out what was what, and I reduced or got rid of all of it, it became extremely easy to make money, because whatever came in wasn't going out just as fast. So definitely take a look at your overhead costs. And if you don't know how to calculate that pretty much take all your hard costs, which your monthly bills are going to be, separate out your materials and your labor, and the rest of that is your overhead. Now start figuring out what part of that overhead is necessary and what is not.
And it's real too. I mean, if it's coming out of that account, it's real cost. And I bet you over a 10, 5, 10, 15, and in your case, 20-year period, it just sneaks up on you a little bit at a time, right?
It does. You get comfortable. And the problem is, once you get comfortable, especially the nature of this business, is very volatile. It's feast or famine. But if you get comfortable, that's where you lose. You got to be continually, you have to be checking your numbers. And the way you do that, for me, for example, if we take on an additional cost, whether, I don't care if it's software, more computers, I go back to the drawing board and add it to my overhead. And then I take a look how much overhead has been reduced, because it changes. It depends on how many employees you have, how many trucks you're running at any given time. One of the things that I've learned to do ever since what I went through is, by keeping my costs to keep my costs down, is when it comes up time for renewal, you understand I have a fleet of trucks. When it came up for renewal, well, I have 4 trucks that really weren't running all the time because we were having helpers meet on the job site. So only the electricians were running the main trucks. So when I re-upped my policy, I went ahead and turned those tags in and parked the trucks, just have them maintained once a week, started up and checked. But I parked them because I was looking at, why am I spending this extra $2,500 a month on vehicles that are parked? And again, you go back to multiplying that over 12 months,
yeah,
and all the other costs that were unnecessary. Like, just like one of the points that I was trying to, not points, I'm sorry, one of the talking points I wanted to talk about was living within your means. Just like your business, you do in your home, your business used to do that. So for example, to save money at home, you cook at home. Well, in your business, instead of buying lunch, I bring meatloaf from the night before. And if it was a little dry, add some water and pop it in the microwave. You'll be fine.
Right. And when you put a real number to it, all of a sudden it becomes worth the exercise sometimes. Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing when you actually take it down, when you decide for your overhead and you say, okay, this is unnecessary, and you look at it one time, it's not a big deal. But when it's repetitive, when it's weekly, and you add it up over a year's time, and you start to do that with everything that's unnecessary, you'd be surprised. You could have hired probably 2 or 3 more electricians.
So true. And then, spending costs like that, and hiring an electrician for a truck that you have parked and putting that back in your insurance policy. Now it's like a revenue generating exercise with cost, totally different than just burning up the cost, right?
Right. So what they did was they said, look, you can't just remove trucks and put them back in when you need them. So when I re-upped the policy for the year, I start off with exactly what I need, because you can add trucks to your policy, but you can't remove them once you're already locked into a policy.
Right.
So that I figured out, at the beginning of the year, normally everything starts to take off because during the holidays, everything slows down. So if I have trucks that were sitting idle and I don't see a need for them in the next few months, they're going to get parked when I re-up that policy, and then I'll add them as I need them. But all that extra added cost that I get to keep each month now goes towards the employee's benefits, towards anything that we really need for the business.
I love it. So another thing you did amazingly well, and it's no secret now, the way you just described communication is, you making the decision at some point to look into a lending option. Ultimately, you looked at a lot of different things, and it was great. I'm so grateful you came to us, and it was a great option and a great choice for us. Talk about the process you went through to decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to use a lender. I'm going to try to execute this work with some lending options. What did you look at? How did you ultimately decide on going to mobilization funding versus some of the others? And then let's talk a little bit about how you handled that entire project and us as a lender. And just maybe you can give your words through the insight, because I can tell you, you were amazing at how you communicated with us. But hearing you talk about some of these experiences you've been through, understanding how and why you went about that, which is not the norm, by the way,
Right.
for a lot of folks in not construction, just in any kind of communication problem, or especially if there's a disaster or if there's a stress and pressure, it's not like everybody's strong suit to just all of a sudden start communicating,
Right.
Talk a little bit about that and how you kind of made some of those decisions.
Can you ask the question just in a snapshot real quick for me again?
Sure. Tell me a little bit about how you went about making the decision to use a lender, who you looked for, how you made the decisions, and how you ultimately landed on mobilization funding.
Okay. So the way it started was I landed a pretty decent multifamily contract, new construction, and I was a little shorthanded. So the route I took, which is typical in my field, was I found piece workers. And now with piece workers, are you familiar with them?
Yep.
So you know that they move at a very fast clip. You make a lot of money with them, but most of these guys are not willing to wait till you get paid. So I got caught up in that vicious cycle with the MCAs. And when the first one happened, I started looking for other options, and I came across your company. And after speaking with Gene, I was like, this can't be real. I've never seen any kind of finance like this to help us out. This was it was even and fair for everyone. So I ended up going that route. It worked out beautifully. I was able to keep up with the piece workers, complete these jobs at a pace that was unbelievable, and make a very nice profit. Then I ran into that one particular contract that was not my fault, your fault, or anyone's fault but theirs. And I got caught up in that vicious cycle, and eventually got out of the MCA. You guys, obviously, I had you guys still on the hook with me, helping me out, and you guys were phenomenal and instrumental in getting out of this problem, getting past the problem. But that's how it started. It started on a positive note. I needed the funds because we had the work. We had the need for all the additional help. And it was going great until I ran into that one project that was large enough to cripple the rest of them. Now, and the reason that I really kept pushing forward, one of the reasons I really kept pushing forward with that job we were speaking about, was I had a lot of obligations with the other contractors on other projects. So if I would have let that one job take me down, I would have inadvertently hurt the other companies that were doing right by me, and I was doing right by them. So I found myself in a spot where I had to make it right for everyone.
That's awesome. What did you see as the difference ultimately when you were thinking, like looking at the merchant cash advances, and you get a nice big lump sum of money up front, It obviously feels good. You got maximum control over what you want to do with it. And then, the payment structure starts coming, and that obviously hurts, getting debited daily or weekly. And when you're analyzing that against mobilization funding, for example, where you don't have a one big lump sum, you have access to the dollars, but then you have restructured payments. Maybe in your own words, can you talk about the difference between that for
Yeah.
folks that are trying to figure out what is that, how does it work differently?
With the MCAs, whether, in our business, we don't collect a weekly paycheck or even monthly sometimes. So they're going to collect their money. The way they structured it, they wanted a direct withdrawal every single week. Even if you get them to agree to do it once a month, they're going to withdraw whether you collect it or not. So if it puts you in a financial bind, that's kind of your problem. With you guys, it was, you guys work with us in a way where when we get paid by the contractor, as long as we got an approved pay app and we're following the process, you guys are not hounding us, and you're actually not hitting us with the kind of fees that the MCAs do. So you, in essence, you are the perfect partner when it comes to construction, especially these larger jobs that I do, even the medium-sized jobs, because when you have multiple jobs, you're going to run out of money eventually. And like I've seen some of your other podcasts when you talk about it, is the problem that you have to create a pay app, which takes about a month, and then it's 45 to 60 days before you collect on that pay app. So essentially you're out 90 days. Now do that over 5-6 large projects. It hurts. Little guys like me can't afford that, and having partners like you is fantastic. The MCA is a vicious cycle. I'm not saying they're designed to hurt you, but they're definitely designed for them. If it's a one-sided deal, the bank's going to make all the money. You're going to hurt whether you make the money or not, because the amount of interest that they charge and the timing when they take that money, whether you got paid or not, can effectively affect your day-to-day business. So you guys were fantastic. You were instrumental. I can't wait now having you on my side. And when I say that, is as a friendship, makes it very exciting to go after more projects, find the work, because I know I have someone I can count on. And when I was under the gun and locked into battle, instead of you guys forcing me or hounding, you guys helped me. Yeah, you guys actually went out of your way to help me, and I couldn't believe it. It was fantastic. Normally, these type of situations create enemies, and what I do is I found friends.
Likewise, my friend. We really did. It's the same. It's the feelings mutual.
Thank you.
How do your customers look at the difference between the different lending options that you might have used in the past and mobilization funding? Do they see it any different, or do they give you an easy time, a hard time, or how does that work?
It's a mixed bag. I've had some of them that they were familiar with it, not really to your extent, the way you guys do it. They were even more comfortable when I explained how it works with mobilization funding. Some of them, as soon as you mention it, they didn't want any part of it. And even if you told them, look, you really don't have to do any, they didn't want any part of it. And it's like, well, the way I look at it is if a general contractor doesn't want me to have a partner like a bank, then what are your intentions? So that was a no-brainer for me to have you guys as a partner. Why would a GC have a problem with it? I don't understand it. I don't know if they think that it's a weakness on the subcontractor's part, that they don't have enough money in cash flow. I guess and I believe it's a mentality where they think if I'm on their job site, I'm only on their job site.
Right.
And so
it's not that they want to pay you weekly themselves, is it?
No, not at all. So that's pretty much, you guys are a unique form of partner. I've never seen anything like it. And it made it to the point where you make money, but you don't make all the money. We get to share with you. And it makes it where we can take on more work at any given time and not worry about paying our bills. I mean, it's fantastic.
Well, I love it, man. You use our loan program exactly the right way to get yourself through new work, new projects, try to avoid cash flow problems. Obviously, even when there becomes a problem on a project, if you build it correctly from the beginning and you execute it, you could still get to the end of it. Yes, it might hurt, and yes, you might not make the money you made, or in some cases even lose, but you can avoid a catastrophe, even if you have a lender or not.
Well, I believe what we need to do is with general contractors is when we get awarded these contracts, when it comes down to qualifying the contract, is find out whoever your point of contact. If it's not the GC directly, typically it's going to be project managers. is send them something explaining, what we're doing. Have a verbal conversation, then email it to them so they feel comfortable with it, because there's nothing but positivity coming out of your organization. So I just think when they hear bank or lending, they think that they're getting locked into something, or the property's going to get locked into some type of issue if I was to default. That's the only thing I can fathom. So I'm trying to figure out what their fear is, and the ones that I have talked to that will actually sit down and listen to you afterwards are like, oh, that sounds great. They like it because they know I'm not going to be pressuring them to collect money when I run short if they didn't get paid in a timely fashion.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure after you had a conversation with one of your general contractors, they reached out to Gene to learn more about the program overall for the rest of their subcontractors, because they had a good experience as well.
It's all about, again, going back to communication. It's just them willing to listen to you.
That's right.
It's a great product, and the ones that don't listen to you, I've kind of come to the conclusion lately is I don't want to deal with them, because if you're not willing to have a conversation as a trade partner, then you're just looking at me like I'm your employee. I'm trying to make you money and make myself money, when it comes to the general contractor. But like I said, for the most part, most of them are listening to you. This one was a completely toxic environment. Obviously, it got to the point where they didn't care where I got paid from, as long as I wasn't harassing them.
Yeah.
But the only communication I got out of them, which was another issue I ran into that I hope a lot of subcontractors don't, but we all inevitably do, is if I would hear back, well, we didn't get paid because we couldn't get all the subcontractors to turn in their conditional lien waivers because they were disgruntled. Well, that's another problem I have with the companies that lend money for construction, not your type of bank, but you know what I'm talking about when it comes to the actual development, is they tether all of us together, all subcontractors. So all it takes is one subcontractor to not turn in his conditional lien waiver, nobody gets paid.
Right.
And if you look at it in reality, the subcontractors are the lenders, because all we're doing is once we get an approved pay app and they turn it over to the bank, is they're just reimbursing. We're the one holding the bag until we get reimbursed and then take our little bit of profit off the top.
Yeah. So, I mean, and they all know that. It's not like they don't know that. So I think you being communicative, open, honest, pushing that issue, but not in a negative way, but like addressing it proactively and upfront and what you need, puts you in a great position to be able to execute. And then obviously that execution turns to great performance, and great performance then gives you the ability to negotiate. And at the end of the day, these folks need their projects built. They just want them done. They want them to perform well within budget. And if you can communicate what you need to execute properly, you're going to be at an advantage. And then obviously you build a reputation around that. Now you're at a significant advantage. And I think that's what you're doing, especially with the way you showed up during great times and tougher projects.
Yeah.
So your position, great, man. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And we're excited. We have several contracts now under our belt, ready to, some of them just began and some are starting in the next few months. So I'll be reaching out to you, but it's shaping up to be a phenomenal year as long as everything goes smooth. And like I said, on my part, I'll make sure everything is smooth. But yeah, it's without all the added costs and taking my overhead down to almost nothing. I'm excited. I mean, the amount of money that we can make now compared to before is astronomical.
Yeah, and it stinks going through those projects, but keeping your mindset where you did from a position of strength, not weakness. Look at where you're at now. You're gonna be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor, and you're in a perfect position to do that here this year, where otherwise you might have done the same exact work and executed the same exact way, but you won't have the same exact result. And so that investment you made in these lessons and the things you've done to execute on learning from them, and then implementation, which is so important. The implementation from the lessons is what, a lot of times people miss, and you doing that is now going to set you up for a perfect opportunity to really succeed. And so that's what the real story should be here. And I hope people pull that from this.
Yeah, it's definitely learning lessons. If you don't learn from it, then it was all for nothing. And the other thing that I would recommend to all subcontractors, one thing I've learned a little bit too late in the game, is if one single job can cripple your company, then you're biting off more than you can chew. So in my case, that wasn't the case, and especially having you on my side. But boy, at first it felt like they were trying to.
Yeah.
But
It's a good
yeah,
lesson for business in general. And being patient is the answer there. You know, just don't try to bite it all off at once. Just look at it a little longer horizon. It's not worth the risk sometimes.
correct. So, and that's the other thing is, uh, what saved me is when I win contracts, I'm not the kind that goes out and buys, the $200,000 boat. Uh, that helped me when I got rid of debt to stay away from debt. And so now when I get awarded contracts, what I'm looking forward to is how much is going to be in the bank at the end of the year. Not in my pocket, not in the trucks, not in the boats, in my bank.
Yeah. And that gives you the peace and security and safety and comfort to be able to kind of keep moving.
Correct. And also to reinvest into my business. I'm a teaching company. We offer schooling. So everything that I can add to help my guys, my employees, to keep them happy, keep them motivated, keep them learning, it's always a plus. So I do tend to reinvest a lot into my business, but it's paid off.
I love it. Well, I want to move to a couple quick things. I have 3 rapid questions I like to ask all of our guests. I want to ask you the same. So these questions will be in and around business, but just come up with the first thing that comes to your mind. Let me know what your thought is. Okay?
Okay.
What's the best business advice you've ever received?
Best business advice, it was more of a statement, was being a great electrician doesn't make you a good businessman. Learn. That's the best advice.
Solid. I think we've covered that one too. What's your favorite business book?
One that I read that I really go back to and listen to certain excerpts once in a while is The Power of One More by 𝗦𝗦𝗏. That's going to be one of the ones that I normally go back to. I love that book. It kind of teaches you to retrain your brain to look for certain signals, positive. And so I really enjoyed that book.
I'm very familiar with Ed and that book. He's a wealth of knowledge and information, and that book encapsulates a lot of some of his best teachings. It's a great book. I would recommend that to everybody too.
Absolutely.
What do you think is the most underrated skill in your industry?
Underrated skill, I'm going to say, is going to be one of the top ones is teaching. When we live in a different world, so the younger crowds coming in are very different from mine and your time. We used to try to impress our bosses and make them happy. This newer crowd is more about them being happy. So I'm going to say, if you teach them, one thing I've learned about my younger guys is they stay engaged. They love it. It's like feeding their ego. They're learning more. They feel like they're part of the team, which they are. And it causes them to become more involved on the project and want to climb that ladder.
Yep. And we need that more than ever now.
So yeah, keeping them involved and teaching. Teach. There was a habit back in the day when I started where they limited what you knew. They didn't want you to grow too fast. Now it's backwards. If you don't teach these kids, they get bored. I mean, these kids, by the time they're 10 years old, they're practically computer programmers. Mm-hmm. So if you keep them engaged, keep teaching them, keep them involved, let them be part of the conversation, even if it's a minimal part, they feel appreciated, they work harder, they learn faster.
I love it. I love it. Brick, how can people find you? If they want to find your company, they want to talk to you, connect with you on LinkedIn, what's the best ways to find you?
I'm all over the web. If you go even on Google, Rick'sElectricalInc.com is my website. I'm on Instagram as well. I'm on LinkedIn, and now we're working together with the company to create a new website with SEO and backlinks to further my exposure on the web. But yeah, my office is here in Pasco County now, and if you look up Rick's Electrical Tampa or Rick's Electrical Pasco, all my information pops up. You can email us, reach us through Instagram. We're constantly monitoring and responding. And if someone wants to have just a conversation with me, they can simply call my office, and I'll be more than happy to let me know, and I'll be more than happy to get back to them.
I love it, Rick. You're the man, dude. I really appreciate you sharing all this wisdom and information, being so candid, being who you are. And obviously it's no surprise that why you've been successful and you have a great team and employees and why they love working for you.
Thank you so much. And your partnership with us has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for everything you guys have done.
Well, you're welcome, man. It's our pleasure too. Everybody, please follow Rick and I. Go to LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn. Connect with us there. Our YouTube channel, mobilizationfunding.com. Find Rick, give him an opportunity, catch up. He's a wealth of knowledge and will share all of his information so candidly, as you've already heard. In the meantime, till the next episode, God bless you and have a great week.